the semi-expert, whoever he may have been, I don't even remember, talk to Vincent, stay away from Peter.
It's very good. But did Peter improvise? I mean, I know when you did The Raven, it disturbed someone like Boris Karloff, who I wouldn't want to disturb, but nonetheless, he must have been a bit aggravated to have learned the lines and blocked the scene, and then Peter comes in and does all his, and of course the crew loved him, so whatever he did, they were right 100% behind him. How did you handle that when he would...
This is another picture, The Raven, which had Vincent, Peter, and Boris Karloff, and there we had either a blending or a contradiction of styles. Peter, as I say, was heavily improvisational. Boris was completely classically trained, came in, knew the lines, and was prepared to give the performance. Vincent understood both, having worked with Peter before, but also his background. He was a very good and very sensitive actor, understood both techniques. And it was Boris who actually complained to me a little bit. He said, I come in the morning, I have my scene prepared, I know exactly what the script is, I'm ready to go, and Peter gives me lines that are not in the script. And I said, well, Boris, you have to understand, and so we sort of fumbled it around, and Vincent was very good as sort of the mediator between the two. So Vincent and I would talk to Peter and Boris, and since they were all very nice guys and very good actors, it was only a slight problem for a day or two. Once they got into it, they all started working together very well, and I've always liked The Raven very much because of the melding of the disparate styles.
Well, Vincent told me once that someone from Life magazine came on the set of The Raven, and the writer was fully prepared to send these guys up as these old-timers that are out of step with what was going on in Hollywood in 1963, and Vincent said within one day he was ours. He said there was no way, with Peter coming up with all, and Boris being so charming, and Vincent being who he was, the man wrote the most glowing, you probably remember, all the reviews, and everyone just fell over themselves in praise for this. But The Raven would not have happened if it hadn't been for Tales of Terror. Because when you realized, I imagine, the chemistry, but you know, it's odd. They had done a TV pilot together, and they had known each other for years and years. And I was told recently that when William Castle was doing House on Haunted Hill, it was Vincent Price that had said, well, why don't you get Peter Lorre to play the Elisha Cook part? Well, you know, I love Elisha Cook, but that would have been an entirely different movie with Peter Lorre. Disembodied head, you know, they're coming to get you tonight, you know, it would have been a whole other film. But I imagine with William Castle, did you ever meet William Castle?
Yes, Bill Castle was a friend of mine. I used to play tennis at his house. He was a very good director, but also the classic showman. He used to have these gimmicks, I don't remember them all. On the Tingler, I think he actually wired the seats of the key, at that time there were downtown major theaters, and he wired the seats with a small jolt of electricity at key moments. On another one, he had a skeleton on a wire coming up from behind the screen and going over the audience to the end. Bill was great at that stuff.
He was like P.T. Barnum.
Yes.
He was a showman, but you know, this was what made, but I have to say, because this is the films of Vincent Price, William Castle and Vincent Price together was a great combination. And when Vincent quit making films for Bill Castle, they weren't as successful. So there must be something about Vincent Price as a personality that audiences respond to, because by the time he made House of Usher, Usher kind of cemented the horror icon that he began. You know, unlike Boris, he was comfortable with it, as you know. He was very glad to be working. He loved Edgar Allan Poe. He loved you. He loved those movies so much. And towards the end of his life, I don't know if this was the last time you saw him, but I was a unit publicist on a film a young director named Jeff Burr was making, and we were shooting it in your studio in Venice, and the movie was called The Offspring. And Mr. Gallagher was in the picture there, and one afternoon, Vincent had gotten mad at me because I had accidentally had a reporter go into his trailer during lunch. So he was, and I was so upset because he'd never been mad at me before, and I was just, oh God. So I called Hazel Court, and I said, Hazel, are you busy? Can you come down here? Vincent is really not speaking to me. And she said, oh, I want to see him anyway. She said, I'll come down there. So she came down, and she spent about 20 minutes in the trailer, and then she came out, she said, come on in. And I put my head through the door, and in that oh so familiar voice, he said, listen, never come between an actor and his ham sandwich. And he was very, it was just from then on, it was fine. And you came on the set later that day, and I stood in the background, and it was just such a wonderful moment to see you walking toward him, and he was holding a knife, this huge butcher knife, and he had just done this scene, and he was so glad to see you. And was that the last time you saw him, or?
No. Matter of fact, the last time I saw him, we were at some benefit dinner at the Beverly Wilshire, and we were all sitting together, Julie, my wife, and I, and Vincent, and I think his daughter were there, and he looked out at all the group. We were on sort of a little dais there, and he said, I've never seen so many Republicans in my life.
Yeah, he had that way about him, didn't he? He told me that when you were filming Mask of the Red Death, President Kennedy was assassinated, and it kind of, he said, I never felt so far away from home that day, and the set was closed. Do you remember that?
Yes, we had a couple of minutes of silence for the funeral of Kennedy. At that time, we were shooting at, I forgot, ABC Studios outside of London.
That was such a great film for a number of reasons for Vincent, because he loved the costumes. He said, we had all the clothes from Beckett at half the price. Roger was in heaven.
Actually, that was true. I was talking to my family about it just earlier. The film you've seen, Tales of Terror, was approximately what we were doing. We were shooting these films on a straight 15-day schedule on a small rental lot on Melrose, and we would generally take flats, that is the flat section of sets, out of the scene dock, and Danny Haller, our art director, who's a good friend of mine and very talented man who went on to become a director himself, would create sets for our pictures, and the pictures gradually became bigger and bigger as we reused flats from previous pictures and then went to the scene dock. We went to London to do Mask of the Red Death, and I've forgotten, they had either just shot Beckett or A Man for All Seasons.
I think it was, since that was, what, 63, 64? Yes. Probably was Beckett.
Whatever it was, we walked into the scene dock because we did not have that much money. And we thought we were in heaven. We saw these great flats from Beckett. And then I went over to the wardrobe department and did this wonderful wardrobe. So when you see after this, A Mask of the Red Death, you'll see a picture that really didn't cost any more than Tales of Terror, which you've just seen, but looks much, much richer because of the great sets we were able to create.
Can you compare, I mean, this is wonderful that you're getting to see Tales of Terror, which was photographed by Floyd Crosby, and then you're about to see Mask of the Red Death that was photographed by Nicholas Roeg. Now, you worked a lot with Floyd Crosby, and he did some amazing things with gels and camera angles and color. And Nicholas Roeg also was a master with the palette of hues and you take such advantage of it in that superb sequence where he goes from room to room. Yes. When he goes into the yellow room, he says, I imprisoned a man here, and when he left, he couldn't even look at a daffodil. So it was wonderful stuff. How would you compare those two cameramen?
I was fortunate enough to work with two good cameramen.